And the same thing for retail. I mean, a lot of retail stores are going to realize
Yeah,
that
well, that's another
DTC
topic
that we're talking is also.
especially uh, I follow retail a lot because it's such an interesting, because obviously we don't work so much with retail. We do mostly e-commerce, but even if you're in e-commerce, you have to have your a pulse on the retail space because that affects so much. At the end of the day, now that number is going to change, but last year, 85% of consumer spending still happened in retail.
Right.
And so you still have to have your pulse on retail. I think that I don't know what the new normal is going to be as far as retail.
But you do
like
know
malls that were already in trouble are. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more mall closures this year than we've seen in the last decade, just because most of them are debt financed and all of the stores are shut down. All of the malls are shut down. And I think we're going to see a major kind of, as far as you talk about contained crises within certain sectors, I think the mall sector is going to totally collapse.
That's
honestly.
huge space.
Other than the few malls that are more experience based and maybe a little more premium, and have like not all malls are going to go away, and there's some malls that actually do really well still, but I think a lot of the malls that were kind of just barely hanging on are going to collapse.
Not just the malls, but also independent retail stores. We talk to a lot of companies that are on the verge or on the fence versus DTC versus going retail and trying to put their products on a big box like a Macy's or this is Fashion or Walmart or whatever. And now they're realizing, why do I spend so much money and effort trying to sell at this particular store when it's closed? Basically, I did all this marketing driving my traffic and my customers to Bed Bath & Beyond and it's closed, or Walmart is still open, but any other type of retail store that is now closed, and you say, when I can do the same thing and invest the same money to sell directly to the consumer, my profit margin is higher. So if I take that advertising money and I put it into developing my own direct-to-consumer solution or option, I'm going to compensate that because I'm going to advertise that, and then my margins will be higher. So you control your product from the production stages all the way to the distribution and selling. So I think that is going to make a lot of companies decide, and we have some examples, decide, okay, I'm going to sell directly to consumer because I cannot always rely on the stores. For one, you have limited control on where they put your product. They usually control their prices and they oscillate your prices up and down depending on supply and demand, and you are at the mercy of their advertising as well. So
yes, but obviously the biggest thing, the most important thing that you mentioned is the distribution.
Right.
That's their advantage. Is that
Of
they
course,
have the distribution.
but that's when you
getting the type of distribution, like you said, Macy's. Okay, if you get nationwide into Macy's, replicating that type of distribution D2C is a incredible task.
It's difficult, of course.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't go for it, but I don't know.
You know how many Macy's stores are closing now?
Oh, all of them.
I know.
Well,
not just now because of the pandemic.
It's funny because I was driving
But how many that were closing before already?
Well, I was driving around the other day, and it was so almost ominous because I drove past our local JCPenney's parking lot,
shut down. Yeah.
completely empty. I drove past just a bunch of retailers, and they were just empty, and it was really ominous. And I was like, JCPenney laid off or furloughed all of their workers. I think Kohl's did as well. Did Macy's do it too?
I don't know in all the states, but they have obviously all the New Yorks and all that stuff are closed.
I don't know. I think that a lot of retail stores that were kind of hanging on barely, this is going to cause a ton of them.
But I mean, I don't want to sound too pessimistic on this. It's actually a good thing. I mean, consumers now that are by no choice. I mean, basically by law, basically in home arrest to just put it in one way in some places, either voluntary or mandatory. Basically, they cannot leave their homes. So other than buying food, you can't even do anything that is, or going to the bank, any other retail shopping you cannot do. So they're forced into buying online. That's what we were talking about, Amazon and other stuff. But
I thought that retail would turn into it was already. In fact, it's funny because in January I wrote about before this all happened in my weekly newsletter, Postmates was really trying to grow its retail side of things, because obviously Postmates mostly delivers from restaurants and stuff like that. But they were really trying to partner with retailers so that if you buy something online, like for example from a JCPenney's, instead of having to get it shipped to you and take days and compete directly with Amazon, they can literally grab that unit from your local JCPenney's and get it to you in 2 hours, like 2-hour delivery, right? Which no Amazon even can't compete with that, especially on like fashion and things like that. And so I already thought that was going to happen. Now, whether it would be Postmates or DoorDash or Uber or whoever, that last mile infrastructure was really going to be built out, where you go online to buy things and they take from the local retail inventory. And I think that was going to happen anyways. I just think that this is going to majorly accelerate that, to where retail stores act primarily actually as distribution centers for online purchases rather than point of sales, basically. Revenue, instead of acting as revenue drivers, they more are acting as distribution centers.
And the other thing, I mean, it's not like one trend applies to everybody. Obviously, we know clothing and fashion and apparel, stuff like that is very difficult because you have sizes and colors, and people they need to try things on. So it's a little more difficult when people buy clothing online, and then chances of fitting you perfectly is very hard. I mean, everybody goes to a store like a Macy's or whatever, they go and they grab like 3 or 4 different options, sizes, colors, look at the mirror, fitting room, blah, blah, they pick on one. Buying those things online is a little more difficult. So I always see people still go into stores, and that's why they skew the numbers on online retailers.
Yeah, but that's why they offer free returns and all that.
They offer free returns. Some companies actually offer you to get like 2 or 3 sizes and then return the ones that you don't like. You know, they have those offers, and they're going to have to adapt because it's very hard. I mean, and then even the sizes are not standard. I mean, a lot of things you buy that you say, okay, I'm usually a medium or a large, and then you buy something that is medium or large, and it's either too large or too small. It's kind of hard, you know, even for shoes and everything else. So those things.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge in fashion, and I admire so much the people who work on the operation side of fashion, because I can't imagine the inventory headaches is an understatement that you go through, because I've seen it firsthand. And it's just, the truth is, it's so funny with fashion that a lot of companies in fashion will have the best marketing, the best branding, and they'll lose because they don't have the best supply chain people.
Right.
And supply chain operations and people who are able to really manage inventory extremely well in fashion are the ones who win. And I think it's one of the most underrated things, because when people think fashion, they think it's all marketing and brand, and obviously that's a major part of it, but a lot of people on the outside do not look at the inventory management of fashion, which is so difficult.
Having flexible return policies, and just make it frictionless for a customer.
But all those things eat in a margin. That's the thing. Right. That's why I think we've seen, if you look at inflation for fashion brands, as far as, because there's the, you know, generic cheaper brands, right, that sell for cheap, and then you have the high-end luxury that sell a $500 shirt or whatever. But then you have this very large category where you've seen a lot of companies pop up, like an Everlane, which unfortunately had to lay off a lot of people this past week, and lots of D2Cs where they pop up in this, I don't know what you would call it exactly, but kind of premium mid-market, not luxury as far as like super high-end, trying to compete with the Gucci and Ferragamos and all of those guys, but not, you know, cheap. But I think we've seen inflation on the prices of that mid-market because they offer all these concessions, so that, okay, we'll send you multiple sizes, like you said, or maybe we offer free returns. But all those things cost money, okay? Right. So if you're offering free returns, that return, you have to pay the shipping for that, or you have to pay, you know, all those things cost money. And so because of that, a shirt, a premium, let's say premium quality men's collared shirt that normally maybe you could sell for $100, now they sell for $140 because they have all these extra costs in place, not to mention the massive competition and customer acquisition costs going up. And I think that we've seen a lot of inflation in the pricing in that end. But now I think a lot of people are saying, you know what, I don't need a $140 dress shirt right now. I'm good with the $60 one that I can buy on Amazon or something like that.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen, especially